Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking an incredibly fascinating and, frankly, deeply relatable psychological phenomenon, the hyper-independent adult. If you're someone who would literally rather spend 3 hours struggling to assemble a piece of furniture backwards in the dark than simply ask a friend to hold a flashlight for you, well, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to deconstruct the psychology of hyperindependence. We'll look at why so many of us physically cringe at the mere thought of reaching out, and how this deeply ingrained behavior completely shapes our lives. It's a really compelling journey into how our minds protect us. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this by confronting a core question. When did asking for help become so terrifying? I mean, think about your own life for a second. Have you ever felt a sudden spike of anxiety, like a literal tightening in your chest, just at the thought of sending a quick text message to ask a colleague for an extension, or maybe a neighbor for a tiny favor? For a lot of adults, the prospect of needing someone else feels genuinely dangerous. It feels like a failure. We've built this massive, impenetrable wall around ourselves, and we guard it fiercely. But why? Why in the world do we treat a simple request for support as if it's a life or death threat to our autonomy?
Section 1, Defining Hyperindependence, and really, the problem with trying to do it all alone. Let's draw a super clear line between two concepts we actually confuse all the time. On one hand, we have healthy independence. You rely on yourself to meet your goals, but, and this is key, you are fully capable of accepting support when the load gets a bit too heavy. You recognize that interdependence is just, a normal part of the human experience. But on the other hand, we have hyper-independence. This is refusing support to a highly detrimental degree. Think of that one colleague who will stay at the office until midnight, furiously typing away, rather than just asking you to help them format a document. We live in a society that loves to slap a hustle badge of honor on never asking for a hand, but make no mistake about it, that badge of honor is actually an inflexible wall. It's a severe limitation that's just masquerading as strength. Hyperindependence isn't just some quirky personality trait. So the crucial point is that it is often a potential trauma response or a maladaptive coping mechanism where an individual actively refuses assistance to avoid vulnerability. Think about that last part for a second, to avoid vulnerability. Your brain is essentially telling you that relying on someone else opens you up to terrible disappointment, rejection, or just a total loss of control. Imagine a scenario where asking someone for a simple ride to the airport feels as emotionally risky as skydiving without a parachute. That's what it's like. It feels like a vital survival skill. You aren't doing everything yourself because you genuinely want to. You're doing it because your nervous system is thoroughly convinced that you absolutely have to. Section 2. The Roots of Self-Reliance, Looking Beneath the Surface. So how exactly is this lone wolf mindset actually built? Well, it usually starts way back in early life, with experiences of repeated letdowns or a fundamental lack of support during those really formative years. Maybe caregivers were physically absent, emotionally unavailable, or perhaps promises were just consistently broken. When a child reaches out for help and meets thin air, they learn a very harsh lesson very quickly. To protect themselves from the intense pain of those letdowns, the individual grows up and completely internalizes this mentality. They subconsciously decide, hey, if I never expect anything from anyone, I can never be disappointed. And boom, the armor goes on. By adulthood, that childhood armor solidifies into a complete refusal of help and an incredibly intense self-reliance. The original threat might be long gone, but that defense mechanism, it is still running the show around the clock. Section 3. The Hidden Emotional Costs. The weight of the world. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when you carry that load alone. It takes a massive internal toll. When you refuse help, you are basically sprinting directly toward burnout and profound nervous system exhaustion. You're constantly managing every single variable, acting like a human Swiss Army knife, trying to do the job of a whole toolbox. And you end up spending precious, finite energy masking your true feelings just to get by. But the really great tragedy here is the external friction it creates. It breeds isolation and resentment, mostly because partners and friends start to feel totally shut out. By refusing to let people help you, you are actively blocking care. You are literally denying others the opportunity to love you through acts of service. You build this giant fortress to keep yourself safe, but man, you end up entirely alone inside it. Section 4. Learning to ask for help. Melting the iceberg. Let's move to and see how this builds into something we can actually change, because you don't have to suddenly drop all your boundaries overnight. That would be overwhelming. Instead, try this.
First, identify an incredibly low-stakes task. I'm talking about asking a coworker to proofread a short email or asking your partner to pick up one specific item from the grocery store. Super simple. Next, actually delegate it to someone you trust without hovering over them. Hand it over and physically step back. And finally, the hardest part, sit with the discomfort of not being in control. Your internal alarm bells are definitely going to ring. Your brain will scream that they're going to mess it all up or that you're being a huge burden. But sitting with that anxiety, without stepping in to snatch the task back, is the key. That is exactly how you slowly retrain your nervous system to understand that receiving help is actually truly safe.
I really want to leave you with a lingering thought today. If you didn't have to do it all alone, who would you have the energy to become? Just think about all the creative, joyful, resting energy that is currently being totally consumed by your need to hypermanage your own survival. Imagine reclaiming all of that energy. Opening yourself up to help isn't about becoming weak. It's about freeing up your resources so you can finally thrive, instead of just surviving. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. As you go through your week, try to let someone hold the flashlight for you every once in a while.